Greetings, my friend. Father Leo here once again. And today's the 23rd Sunday in Ordinary Time. And it's the first Sunday in September. And the summer's been over. We've had an interesting summer. As I look out my windows, of course, it's a beautiful, beautiful summer because of all the greenery. And a lot of years it's already burnt off by now, but not this year, which I guess speaks about the amount of rain we've had. So anyway, in the 23rd Sunday, we're moving towards fall. That's for sure. And nobody would argue with that. I took reflection on the Toronto Star today, and it's interesting. It's interesting, the choice of words. And the choice of words often spark an emotional response. For example, the first one is, why is everyone so angry? Well, everyone? I'm not angry. So the generalization there, that since a lot of people are angry, then everybody's angry. Not necessarily so. Not necessarily so. Further along, Canada's election, battlegrounds. Battlegrounds? Ordinarily we think of battle. We think of two armies lined up against each other, and the war is on. So the word battlegrounds, is that really what it is? And maybe that has something to do why some people are angry. And certainly it's very obvious that people are showing their anger during this election campaign. They are angry. I don't argue against that at all. And a battleground, well, I guess some of the angry stuff that's issued from their mouth would not make for peace, that's for sure. That is for sure. So no, I would say it's food for thought. That's all I want to say. It does create food for thought on and questioning and reading with a critical mind and not being afraid to say, I don't agree with that at all. Now, to introduce today, the first reading, the book of Isaiah. Now, what I want to say here right off the top, when we ask people, what kind of a God do you believe in? Well, people will tell you the kind of God they believe in is basically the God they want. We've had a God of unconditional love, a God of creator, a warrior God, a judgmental and punitive God, a God of unconditional love, a God of mercy, a God of forgiveness. So in a very real sense, we're all over the map. Depends on our own personal need or view. And of course, the biggest thing of all is sticking God up in the sky somewhere, seated on a golden throne, and that someday we'll get up there and he'll ask us, how was life? No, we tell him, you got the book of life, God. You know how it was. I hope you notice some of the good things and not just all of the bad things. So there's, again, people in their fear of being judged. And as you know, Freud said that people's image of God is the sum total of their projections. In other words, the Bible says we've made in the image and likeness of God, but humanity changed God into the image and likeness of people. And that's topsy-turvy. That's not it. But on the other hand, we have to be careful that the God we do imagine is a God of comfort, a God of peace, a God who will look after us and protect us, a God who is always bidding us good things. Hold on a minute. Life teaches us a bit about God. And I think that's the first thing. Let's take a look at the first reading today. Now, This is a little different language. Be strong, do not fear. Here comes your God. He will come with vengeance and terrible recompense. Come with vengeance. And you're not supposed to be afraid of him? Well, hold on a minute, boys. If God's coming with vengeance and terrible recompense, it means people are in trouble. And God's going to do serious harm to people because they're in trouble. So, there's many places in the Bible where the prophets talk about a vengeful God, a punitive God. Just as in the Gospels, you'll take Jesus and he'll pray a different picture of God. And that's the one we'll latch on to because we like it a lot better. We like it better. And it's hard for us to live with that sense of non-dualistic thinking where God can be the source of goodness and justice and peace. And God can also be the source of vengeance. It talks about here. Vengeance and terrible recompense. And then he says, be strong, don't fear. Well, hold on a minute. We're bound to fear. So I just want to say, let's balance this up a bit with reality. Balance it up with reality. Because unless we do that, then we have a one-sided picture of God. And the one-sided picture of God doesn't do him justice. Or her justice, whichever you want. Either way, male or female, doesn't do them justice. And I think that there's the last line in the gospel. And I suppose most people hear it, they say, well, it doesn't apply to me. I'm not deaf. I'm not mute. I can talk, so it doesn't really apply to me. Oh, it doesn't. Well, isn't that nice? Like the publican and the sinner went up to the temple to pray, and the publican said, thank God I'm not like that sinner. Listen, God, here's all the good that I do. You must be very pleased with me. And Jesus said, hypocrite, hypocrite. Oh yeah, be very careful. Be careful, very careful. But I think that last line of the gospel, and this is after Jesus has healed a deaf man and a mute man. It's after he's healed them. Now that may be physical, or it could be the healing of his mind and heart so that he can hear and speak the truth. Now those are very more difficult. Now you know that Jesus repeatedly, over and over again, said to the people of his day, you've got to change your mind or you won't get it. You won't get it, whatever it is. You're not going to get it unless you change your mind. And a lot of the people said, hey, Jesus, that's a hard saying. And they turned and walked no more with him. They walked away. A few hung around, but the big crowd, they walked away because, they thought they were right. Just as a lot of people today think their thinking is right and the only thinking. The only way to look at things. Not so. And even disciples of Jesus can also be deaf and mute. Deaf and mute. Deaf we don't want to really hear. Don't really want to hear what God has to say. And mute. We never talk about God. We never speak about God. We never tell people about God. We're mute. Well, if that's true, today's gospel for you and me, not just you, for me as well. That gospel is true. Are we deaf? In other words, are we saying, well, I know those other people are sure deaf, the way they're living, but not me. I want to hear everything. and I don't really hear it. I file it away. Mute. Very mute, unfortunately. Very mute. And so what does it lead up to? What for me it leads up to the question of not who is God. You know, for a long time, one of the questions I pursued was the question, who is God? I read a lot of theology books, a lot of spiritual books. I listened to a lot of lectures. And again, all kinds of various ideas in who is God. Now, of course, we know, if we really think of it, and I think it's a beautiful, beautiful word that we use, is the word God. And the reason I really love it is that it tells us nothing. Tells us nothing. We can use the word car. We can say, oh yeah, there's a place to sit and drive a car. It's got 4 wheels and a motor. I can picture a God. I can picture a car. Or a computer. Oh yeah, I can picture a computer. iPad. Oh yeah, that's easy. But when the word comes up, no use. Because somehow it's a word we can't define. Maybe that's the best way to put it. And so, as I said, for years I pursued the question, who is God? But the last while I've changed my question. And I think that's what I'm trying to do today, is to suggest that we change our question. And the question is, what is God? Now, once you say, what is God, then it casts most of the stuff that we built around who is God, it casts it aside. And now we're on a different plane of searching. What is God? Now, one of the things I've been doing in the last few years is reading a lot of physics, becoming familiar with quantum physics, quantum mechanics, and all of that kind of stuff. Trying to become ever more familiar with and knowledgeable about evolution and all the rest of it. And so that's why I've changed my mind. I have changed my mind. And it wasn't easy because I've been taught again myself about who God was. Now I'm not doing that. Now I move to another plane. It can be up or down. I'm not sure whether it is. But it's a different plane where now I ask, what is God? And it seems the answers I get there are much more in keeping with evolution than the other answers. What is God? What is God? Well, you know, I go to St. John's Gospel, and he's the one who tells me, in his view, what God is. He said, God is love. God is love. God is loving. Because to put God or love down as a noun, again, is to miss it. In a noun, there's not much energy moving. But when it's loving, there's all kinds of energy moving. All kinds of energy. And in other words, quantum mechanics tells us that in a verb, when we use it and really it comes from deep within us, then yeah, there's a pile of energy going out into the universe. And so when John tells us God is loving, then that tells me what God is, that God is love. And if we think of reading the Gospels, we know that Jesus loved unconditionally. He was a loving human being. who loved everything, all of creation, loved everything. And then he said, I want you to do the same. I want you to dip in. I want you to dip in to loving. First of all, the loving of God for you. That God is there for you. And what God is doing is loving you. In other words, you've gone into the lake of love or the river of love or whatever. And you go into the river of love and it flows. Peace is flowing like a river. Healing is flowing like a river. Justice is flowing like a river. Relationships are flowing like a river. And so it's a dynamic thing. It's energy alive and powerful, powerful, powerful energy for the whole world. And that's why we can say that everything in the world is interconnected and interrelated. Because we know that not only human beings can absorb being loved, but so can trees,
Colleen Rivers,
and animals, and grass, and birds, and stones. So come on, let's be real. We're living in a river of love. We're living in the river. And you know what struck me the other day? Don't pay any attention to my phone. It struck me the other day, you know. I thought, and I was thinking about it today, and I thought, the thoughts came to me. They just come to me. I don't know where they come from. Anyway, it came to me. It said, and I've always talked about heaven being here on earth, as well as wherever. And it came to me that I'm living in a lake of love. I am embraced by a lake of love, of loving. I don't like that word love. Loving, it's a verb. And this lake of love is loving me into life. The beauty of a community. I think, for example, of the people who bring me frozen meals every week. And I know they love me. They're loving me. That's what's moving them. The person who does my weekly shopping, it's loving me, motivating her. The gentleman across the road who removes my snow, I know he loves me. And so it is. Around the city, there's so many people have told me that they love me, and I believe it. They are loving me. And I'm living in this, I don't know what you want to call it, lake of love, if you will, ocean of love. I'm loving in there. And what that does for me, it enables me then to love people, to love the trees, love the flowers, to love the birds, to love the animals, loving them. And that's the idea. So when somebody asks me then today, if they were to ask me, who's God, I'd say, I don't know. Now, if they said to me, what is God? I would say, God is loving. Now, I can tell you a little bit about loving because I know what it is to be loved. I know what it is to love others. So I know a little bit about love. A little wee bit. And I'm sure everybody here who's listening to this or gathers Sunday morning, I know you are all lovers. You know? You may claim you're smart or you're dedicated, you're committed, you're a lot of other things. Things. I'm talking about what is God. And God is flowing love, flowing like a river, flowing out of you and me, flowing out into the desert. And that's that mute that the gospel talks about. That's the mute, the desert of silence, the desert of silence. And we know right now that Christianity is a period of transition, chaos everywhere. But we know there is a pattern to loving, a pattern of order. You know, everything is right, everything's going well, I feel great, and then something happens. And we have a period of struggle, chaos. Life seems unfair, or all the other things we can say about life. And that's kind of what's happening for our churches today. We're in that period of chaos. Chaos. And as you know, most people are walking away from religion. They're walking away. Okay. But the point of those who still choose to answer the call to follow Jesus, then no, we're not walking away. We are entering more deeply into the great mystery we call God. And we struggle with the question, what is God? And it comes down to, first and foremost, to the word loving. That we are being loved by family, by friends, all over the place. We're living in a lake of love, in an ocean of love. Love is coming at each one of us from every different direction. And do we recognize it as God? There's the question. And when we are loving other people, do we recognize that it is God, that other person is experienced? And of course, when it's mutual and reciprocal, then we both know it. So the week I just want you to give some thought of where and how are you experiencing God? Last week I talked about eating God. Today I'm talking about experiencing God on the level of love. And if you can see everybody and all the people who love you and know what it is, that's a big healing, because I find as a therapist, so many people don't love themselves anymore. Well, to me it's very simple. If God loves me unconditionally, then I'm going to love myself unconditionally. Very simple. And I know God loves me unconditionally. That's what I experience. People love me with all my warts. Good enough for me. And the same with you. You are being loved by so many. And that's God. Loving is God. So I would say, instead of asking, who is God? I get into a head game. Go to a heart game. Go to the heart. And there ask yourself, what is God? For me, for others, for all of creation. God bless.